We're making the Miss Maggie bag from Emmaline Bags. Hello and welcome. I'm Akram Birth, and you're watching Akram's Ideas, bringing creative and crazy ideas to life. It is time for our September 2019 kickoff, and we are starting with a sew-along that I've put together for you guys for the Emmaline Bags Miss Maggie handbag. And I've got a series of bags here that I'm going to share with you. This orange one, this one that has the orange paisley print, is the one that we'll be making in the sew-along, and it follows the instructions. It's got the side snaps, it's got the magnetic closure, it's got the purse anchors and the purse feet, and everything according to the directions in the pattern. And I also have a variety of other bags here, just showing you different variations of the purse. One of the things that I like about this pattern, other than it is a free pattern, is that it is a great stash buster project. To see more episodes like this, be sure to click the like button, subscribe to Akram's Ideas, and hit the bell icon to get notified of new episodes. If we take this pink one, for example, so I had this solid color pink and it looked kind of boring. So I was able to use some scrap fabric, just sort of put this kind of applique of a flower on the front of it to give it more interest. The inside here, as you can see, I've used actually that orange paisley again for the inside of the purse. But there's other elements like this top facing here and even the interior pocket, which you probably aren't going to be able to see in here. That can be made using contrasting fabric. Even the straps, for example, on this one here is made out of a contrasting fabric. So you have a variety of ways that you can use up some small scraps of fabric. You can make this bag using a variety of different fabrics. For the orange bag and the pink bag, I just used quilting cotton, but for this floral bag here, this floral is actually a canvas fabric. So again, you have a couple of different options. You can also use faux leather, which would also make your bag just a little bit more professional looking if you wanted to go that route. But in our example, we're going to use some simple quilting cotton and we're going to make this little bag here. Now, let's get started. To get started, you're going to cut two 16 by 13 inch rectangles out of your exterior fabric, and you're also going to cut two 16 by 13 inch rectangles of fusible interfacing. This is a medium to lightweight interfacing. The instructions have you cut this a ½ inch smaller than your exterior fabric, but that is only necessary if your exterior fabric is a thicker fabric and it reduces bulk at the side seams. In my case, I'm using quilting cotton, so I cut the interfacing for all of these pieces on this project the same size as the fabric. The aligning, you're going to need two rectangles cut at 16 inch by 10 and a half inches in length. And again, you're going to cut lightweight to medium weight fusible interfacing at the 16 and 10 and a half inches for the lining as well. You're going to cut two upper linings or top facings, as the instructions refer to them as. These are cut at 3 inches by 16 inches in size. And again, for these pieces, you're going to want to cut two pieces of fusible lightweight to medium weight interfacing at the 16 by 3 inch length. For the purse straps, you're going to cut two 4 by 17 inch length of fabrics, and I'm using the exterior fabric on this as well as the top facing, and you're going to cut interfacing the same size, the 4 by 17. You're going to cut a 10 by 10 inch square for our interior pocket, Then you're going to cut the bottom stabilizer out of some heavyweight crafting interfacing. You're going to cut this at 3.5 by 12 inches. And then finally, you're going to cut foam stabilizer for the exterior of the bag. This is cut at 17 inches by 26 inches. There are a few discrepancies in the instructions about how big this foam needs to be, but I found that 17 inches by 26 inches works best. Besides the fabric and interfacing, you might want to add some bag hardware, and I encourage you to look at Emmaline Bags' website. They have a large selection of bag hardware. This is totally optional, but it gives your bag a little bit more professional feel. And I'm going to be using some bag hardware that I had in my stash, starting with these 4 top anchors for the straps. I'm also going to be using 4 purse feet, along with 1 magnetic closure for closing the bag. I'm also going to be using 4 pairs of rivets to secure the straps, and then 2 pairs of metal snaps for the closures at the side seams. Now that we have all of our fabric pieces cut out and our interfacing cut out, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to apply all the lightweight interfacing to the fabric pieces. Here are all the fabric pieces with the interfacing. So we have our 2 top lining pieces with the interfacing on it. We also have the exterior fabric with our interfacing, the lining with the interfacing, as well as our strap pieces with the interfacing. The first thing that we're going to do, since we're still at the iron adding the interfacing, we're going to work on the straps. So what we want to do is we want to iron the edge, the short edge of our straps at a 1/4 inch inward on both sides. Once we have that, we're going to want to fold our strap down, press it, open it back up, and bring the 2 outer edges to the inside and press down. And I have the other one already pressed so you can see what this looks like. But basically what we've done here, I've got my outer short edge here pressed at a 1/4 inch, and then I've pressed the whole thing in half once to get that inner seam, pressed the outer edges in, and then press the whole thing down. And once you have both straps pressed, you're going to edge stitch 1/8 of an inch around the entire strap. I will say that it may be a little thick right up here where you have that inner fold, so just be sure to go slow on the 2 short ends as you make your way around. Here are our straps, and they have been top stitched, and once you have both straps top stitched, you can go ahead and set these aside for later. We're going to move on to the exterior pieces, and I have both exterior pieces here. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just align these up on top of each other. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut out a 2-inch square in both corners here. And I'm going to use, I've got a little quilting ruler here, and I'm just going to use the 2-inch mark and line it up. And I'm going to do both of these at the same time so that I can get them done relatively quickly. And I'm going to be using my rotary cutter to cut this. So I'm just going to come here to the 2-inch mark at the edge of my fabric. Now that these pieces have the notch cut out of them, I'm going to put them right sides together. So this is the wrong side that we're looking at. Now we're going to sew the bottom edge here, and we're going to go ahead and pin this down. Now I recommend using these Wonder clips, and I actually have two of varying sizes of Wonder clips. So I've got these smaller sizes and these bigger ones, and these are going to come in really handy when we're getting into the thicker fabrics. So I'm going to use the smaller ones for this edge here. Once we've got this pinned down, we're going to sew this at our seam allowance, which is 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter. And then once we've stitched this, we're going to press it open. Once you have sewn the bottom seam of your exterior front and back pieces, you're going to want to press that seam open and add a decorative top stitching 1/8 inch on either side of the seam line. Here is my foam stabilizer, and as I said earlier, I am using a fusible foam stabilizer. So one side of it is nice and smooth and the other side has a little bit of grit. And I'm going to set my exterior fabric right side up, and I'm going to kind of just center it on my stabilizer here. I'm going to go ahead, iron this, fuse it down, and then go to the sewing machine, and we're going to be using a basting stitch and stitch all the way around the entire perimeter of our exterior fabric at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and we want to go 1/4 inch, so this will eventually be on the inside of our 3/8 inch seam allowance. This is just another level of securing the exterior fabric to the stabilizer and make sure that it doesn't shift on us regardless of whether we've got it fused properly or stitched. We've made sure that the foam stabilizer is attached properly to the exterior fabric. I have my exterior fabric fused onto the foam stabilizer, and then we base stitched it all the way around, and now I'm trimming it back, and I've already trimmed some of it, and I'll show you how I do that. So I'm going to go to the back here, and I'm actually just going to turn it on its side, and I'm going to press the foam up. And again, we did fuse this, so the fabric may still be a little tacky onto the foam, but we should be able to pull it away real easily. And so I'm going to open that up. I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to come along this edge and just start cutting away like so. When I get to this area here, I'm actually going to come way far on the inside just so I can get some of this excess foam out of the way so we can see this seam. And I'm going to basically now do the same thing. I'm going to cut into the foam, making sure that I lift out the fabric underneath it. And again, I'm going to just press the foam to the back. So press the foam to the back, and I'm going to take my scissors really close to that seam. And this is just going to make it easier to sew together by reducing a lot of the bulk that is added with the foam. And then finally, I'm just going to do this last bit right here as well. And now we have our exterior fabric and our foam as one. Now we're going to move on to the heavyweight interfacing that goes along the bottom of the bag. So I'm going to set the exterior out of the way for just a moment, and I am using a heavyweight crafting interfacing that is fusible. So one side is smooth and one side has a little bit of a sheen to it, and this is the fusible side. Before we place this on the bag, we need to make a few marks. The first mark that we're going to make is we're going to mark the center of our interfacing lengthwise. And we're going to do that simply by folding our interfacing in half and using a chalk pencil. You can even use a pen since this is going to be completely enclosed, but just mark where the center is. And this is going to line up with the seam line at the bottom of the bag. Now, if you are using purse feet, you're going to want to mark their position at this point, and we're marking it 2 inches over and 3/4 of an inch down, and we're going to do that for all 4 of the purse feet. Now what we want to do is we want to place this using the center lines as a guide, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see this on camera, but I can see through this foam interfacing. I can see the seam line, but I can also lift up on the bag, get that seam in view, and line up the center of the interfacing with that seam and pin it down just like so. And I'm going to do that onto the other side. So now what we're going to do, I'm going to take this quickly to the iron to just to tack it down, and I'm going to base stitch the side seams at that 1/4 inch just to make sure it holds. Here you can see that we've basted on that heavyweight interfacing at the bottom, and we've got our little marking points for where we're going to set the purse feet. Again, this step is completely optional, but I have 4 purse feet here, and these are just the little tab kind. You just put it through the hole and then you spread the tabs apart to lock it in place. So to actually get our feet in here, we're going to need to make a hole. I'm going to attempt to use this hole punch tool that actually came with my riveter set, and hopefully this will at least give us a marking point that we can reference for the hole. And in efforts not to ruin my countertop, I've got this little block of wood and some paper towels here just to keep my fabric clean. And I'm going to go ahead and set my little hole punch here right on that marking point. And I'm going to take my hammer and I'm going to just hammer that down. And I don't know if you're going to be able to see, but it's fairly visible where the hole is, and I can just easily press the foot in there. Again, what you want to do with the feet is just spread the 2 ends apart, just like so. So there we have our purse feet in our bag. And again, like I said, this just gives it a little bit of a professional look, but you do not have to include the purse feet in the bag. So now is finishing up the exterior bag. What we're going to do now is we're going to put right sides together. And we're going to use our big wonder clips here to get the edges, the side edges, and clip those together. So I've got my 2 side seams clipped together. I'm going to stitch this at 3/8 inch seam allowance on both sides. Now we have our side seams stitched, and as you can see, I've pressed these side seams open. Now we want to take care of the corner of our purse. We already have a little mark where the center of the back seam is, and if we look really carefully here on the inside, we can actually see that bottom seam. And we want to line that bottom seam up with the side seam, and we hold them together like this, lining them up. And I'm just going to use one of my wonder clips here, and this is a perfect example of where these wonder clips really shine, is that they're able to grab all those layers really easily. And so we're going to do the same thing on the other side, and we're going to stitch our 3/8 inch seam allowance right here along the edge, and then we're going to stitch another 1/8 inch to the seam allowance just to secure that stitch and ensure that we have a really nice secure corner. And we're going to do that on both sides. So here you can see we've got our exterior bag pretty much assembled, and here is that corner seam where we've stitched 3/8 of an inch and then another 1/8 of an inch to the inside at the seam allowance. And now the only thing to do is to turn this right side out and make sure that everything looks good. You're going to want to get your fingers in those corners and really press those corners out. You might find that you have a few little flyaway threads that may show up. None of your stitching should be visible on the outside. And you've got your purse feet there. And so there is your exterior bag, and you can kind of get a sense of what this purse is going to kind of look like at the end. So we are pretty much done with the exterior part of the bag. Now we're going to move on to the interior lining. For the interior lining, the first thing that we're going to do is the first thing that we did with our exterior bag, and that is to cut out our little 2-inch notch. And I just have both lining pieces, and I've got them right on top of each other so that I can cut this little notch out at the same time. And what we're going to do now is we're actually going to work on that slip pocket. So I have my 10 by 10 piece of fabric here that's going to be the slip pocket, and I'm going to fold it in half, right sides together. You're going to want to stitch all the way around the outside of the pocket, leaving a opening right in the bottom here so we can turn it out. And we're going to be using a 1/4 inch seam allowance around the pocket bag. Here you can see that I've done my 1/4 inch seam allowance around the pocket, and I also have made a little opening so I can turn this. Before turning it, we do want to clip the corners, and I really like using my pinking shears to do this. And now we're just going to simply turn this out. You can use a point turner to get these corners poked out in your pocket bag. I like using just a really big knitting needle because I have one in my stash. Even though I don't actually knit, I ended up with a giant knitting needle, but it works really, really well for poking out corners. All you have to do now is take it to the iron and give it a good pressing. Here we have our little pocket bag, and it has been ironed down, and I'm only going to be working with one of our lining sheets, so I'm going to set the other one aside. And what we want to do first is find the center of our lining. So I'm just going to fold this over, and I'm just going to crease it with my hands just to find that point. So there is my center. And I want to find the center of my pocket as well. So I'm going to basically do the same thing. I'm just going to press this down. And you'll notice that I am using the opened edge of the pocket bag for the bottom of the pocket. So again, I'm just going to fold this, kind of make a creasing here, and align that crease up on the center line. And to find the exact position, I'm going to once again use my little ruler here, and I'm just going to come down 2 inches. I could also use the grid marking on my mat here if I can see through the fabric, but the fabric's a little thick, so it makes it a little difficult. But I'm going to just take my pocket and I'm going to get it so that it is 2 inches from the top, line it up with the edge. For this particular application, since we're kind of in the middle of the bag, we are going to want to go ahead and pin our pocket bag in place. Now, when we are sewing this, we are going to sew around the entire outer edge of the pocket, keeping the top edge open. And then we want to go ahead and make this 2 pockets, and that's what this center line is. And so we're going to just pin and then stitch down the center line. Before sewing this pocket, what I like to do is I like to add one of my little labels to the inside of the pocket. So I'm actually going to pin this side down just to get it in place, and I'm going to fold it back over here and kind of place my label so that it will be on the inside of one of the sides of the pockets, and it just up to you which side you want it. So I'm going to actually stitch around my little label here. I have my tag now sewn down, and I'm just going to pin it in a few locations. And like I said, I'm going to leave the top edge unstitched, and I'm going to stitch I'm going to edge stitch all the way around the pocket, and then I'm going to come down and stitch along the center mark. Here is our lining piece with the pocket. As you can see, I've got the tag on one side of the pocket there. And now what we're going to do, I'm going to take my other lining piece here, and we are going to now apply the top facing, as it's referred to in the instructions, or that little top lining piece as I've been calling it. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to apply this to the top of our bag lining, and we're going to just put right sides together, and we are going to go ahead, pin the top facing to the top of the lining, and I'm going to do that for both lining pieces, and then I'm going to stitch our 3/8 inch seam allowance all the way along that edge, and then I'm going to press the seam towards the bottom lining. Here are our two lining pieces, and as you can see, I've got the top edge facing sewn onto the lining, and on the back, and I'll just show you one of these, I have pressed the seam towards the bottom lining, and what we have done is we have then edge stitched to the bottom of the seam allowance an 1/8 inch, and then 1/8 inch from that, just to keep that bottom seam allowance towards the bottom lining. And I've used a contrasting thread, so it kind of shows up. I don't know if you can see it. I've got sort of a off-white cream colored thread that I've been using, and so on top of the pink it kind of gives it a little hint of contrast, while in the main fabric it just kind of disappears. So I could have used a pink just to make it more invisible, but I like that little extra added interest by using contrasting thread. Before we wrap up our lining, we need to insert our magnetic closures. And this again is kind of optional, but it does make your bag look more professional, and it gives it a closure. And I don't know about you, but I really prefer bags that I can at least snap close, just to ensure that things don't fall out of it as easy. So I have these closures here, and one will have a little raised portion, and one will have a little socket that they snap into, and they should both have these little washer pieces that go on the back side of them. So the first thing we're going to do is mark where these go. So I'm going to take one of my lining pieces here, and I'm going to find that center mark. So again, I'm just going to press it. So I've got my center line marked, and I'm going to mark down 1.5 inches down from there. Mark it on the back side, and this should be a little bit more visible on camera. So I'm just going to find my 1.5 marker point, and my magnetic clips have 2 prongs. So what I like to do is I like to kind of get the magnetic clip centered where it needs to be, and then kind of put a mark where those 2 prongs are. And I'm going to take my small scissors here and just kind of clip into those areas. So now I'm going to take this, slide it through, and you can see it comes through really nicely. I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to place the little washer on the back of it here. And now what I'm going to do is I need to hammer this down. And again, I don't want to put too much pressure on my countertop, so I'm going to use that block with a little piece of paper towel on top of it, just so it doesn't scuff up our fabric. And I'm going to take my hammer now, and I'm just going to hammer one side of it inward, and then the other side of it inward. just like so. And there we have our magnetic closure for this side, and we're going to repeat the process on the other side. We can double check and make sure that our closures actually are kind of centered in the right place. It's kind of too late now, but we can still kind of snap them in place, and you can see that I got it. They're all lined up on the edges and everything, so things are good. So now what we're going to do is just basically wrap up this project, and to do that we're going to sew 3/8 inch seam allowance down the side seams and this bottom seam. Now at the bottom seam we are not going to stitch all the way across. We're actually going to leave about a 7-inch gap at the bottom so that we can turn the purse out when we're done. So we're going to stitch these seams, we're going to press these seams open, and then we're going to finish the corners just like we have for the exterior purse. The only difference is we're going to keep a 7-inch opening down here at the bottom of the purse lining. Here is our purse lining, and as you can see I've stitched up the side seams, I've stitched up the bottom seam having that little gap on the inside here, and then also having stitched up the corner seams just the same way that we did on the exterior bag. Now we're going to assemble the purse. Here is our purse lining. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn the lining right side out. And now we're going to take our exterior bag and we're going to turn this exterior bag wrong side out. Now you can see this is the inside or the outside of the purse, and I'm going to take my lining and put it on the inside here. Now one more tip. My purse does not have a necessarily distinct front or back to the purse, but say that I did. With that in mind, you may want to consider where you want your interior pocket. What I like to do is that if, for example, this was the front of my purse and I'm looking to the inside, I want the pocket here. I don't want to have to like pull it back. I don't want to have to pull it back and see the pocket on this side. So if this is the front, I want the pocket on that side. So again, think about where you want that. If that is the case, whichever side is your front side, you want this pocket piece on the opposite side. So if this was the front of my purse and this was the back of my purse, I want to make sure that this pocket is facing the back of the purse. Now that I've got my purse pieces inside of each other here, I'm going to use the Wonder Clips to clip the purse lining to the purse exterior using the side seams as my main guide here. So I'm going to make sure that those side seams are lined up on both sides, and then I'm just going to go around and make sure that the purse pieces line up. Now we have the top edge of our purse clipped together. I'm going to take this back to the sewing machine and sew that same 3/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way around, and then we're going to bring it back and bag it out. Here is my purse, and as you can see I have stitched all the way around the top, and now it's time to bag it out. So basically we're just going to take this opening that we have in our lining and we're going to shove the exterior of the purse through it. And you want to be kind of gentle here, you don't want to rip any seams, but you do want to go ahead and get it out. There we go. And as we're doing this, you also want to make sure that you press out those corner points in your purse exterior. And as you can see, this is kind of what it looks like at the moment, but you're going to go ahead and now shove the lining piece into the bag. And see what it all looks like right here. So we're getting a sense of what the finished product's going to look like. Before we wrap up the lining and finish this off, we need to go ahead and either slip stitch or just top stitch the bottom of our lining really quickly to make sure that we close up this hole that we left open. So here you can see I just stitched over that opening using a top stitching at about 1/8 inch away from that seam, or about edge stitching length. So I'm just going to toss the lining, pushing the corners into the corner of the exterior. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to take this back to the ironing board and press along the top edge here, making sure that the lining is going to the inside. Once we've got it all pressed, I'm going to go back to the sewing machine and I'm going to stitch a 1/4 inch away from the top edge, just to ensure that our lining doesn't roll out from the inside. Here is our bag, and we're just about finished. We've got the top edge all top stitched and ready to go. So another optional feature of this bag is you can add side snaps to it, which allow you to fold the bag in like this, giving the bags a slightly different shape. This is done by using some metal snaps. And again, this is totally optional. You could leave your bag like this to give it more of a tote bag shape. But to create the side shaping, we're going to use some metal snaps. And I've got these snaps here. This is the set of snaps that I have. So what you have is you have your capped piece that looks like this, your open or female end of the snap, your studded or male end of the snap, and then your backing for that side. And I believe you can get these that are capped too. Mine just happen to look more like a grommet or a rivet. And what we're going to do before we put these on is that we need to mark where these snaps go. Going back to our purse, and I'm going to want to mark, using this side seam as a guide, I'm going to want to mark 1.5 inches down and 1 inch over. I'm going to hold down the lining so that it doesn't accidentally shift on me. And right there. So I'm going to, there's my hole. It went all the way through. That looks great. I'm going to go ahead and on this side, I'm going to put the post for the stud. And our snap system came with 2 hammering tools. One is for the hole of the snap or the opening, and one has a concave for the stud. So I'm going to set the concave one over the stud, hammer that in place. Now I'm going to come to the other side here, start again by removing or marking our hole. I'm going to bring the capped one over on this side. So now we've got that, and now we have our open end for the snap, and we're going to take our presser hammer right here, put that inside the hole and press down on it. And there you go. There is your side snap. Here is your bag with the snaps on the side. Again, it just gives extra shaping to your purse so it doesn't have that standard tote bag shape to it. The last thing we want to do is attach our straps. So we're going to bring our straps back into the equation, and I'm going to be using these top anchors, top edge anchors for the purse here. So first, what we want to do is go ahead and open up the snaps on the side so they are out of the way, and open up the interior snap and kind of decide where we want these on our purse. Now, if you're using any of the hardware from Emmaline Bags, in the instruction she does indicate how to place those on your bag. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up my bag here with my grid and kind of figure out where I want my straps to set. And I think I want it 3 inches in. So at this 4th inch, so 1, 2, 3, and then at this 4th inch is where I want my top clip. And you can see on these particular clips, there's a back side that has these little clips or teeth that grab into the fabric, and then the front side is a nice smooth side. So you want the front side facing out. And I'm just going to find where I want it. I'm going to place it, and I'm just going to lightly press it into place, and that's just going to hold it, and then I'll hammer them all in one at a time. So now that I have my anchors where I want them, I want to go ahead and hammer these down. And I'm actually going to be hammering from the inside so that I don't scuff up the outside of the anchors. So I'm going to take my little block here with the paper towel, and I'm just going to hammer that down. And now our bag is ready for the straps. So all you're going to do is you're going to push your straps through. Now my anchors are slightly smaller than my straps, but it's only ever so slightly, so I'm not too worried about it. But what I like to do is I like to set this up so that it's about 1 inch over. And I'm just going to clip this in place for now. And then again on this side, I'm going to push it through the hole and kind of measure 1 inch so that it's up past the strap at about 1 inch, and clip it into place. So at this point you have a couple of options. You can go back to your sewing machine and just stitch the top portion of the strap so that it holds in place. You can even secure that with sort of a cross X shape stitching, and I would even suggest using a zipper foot so that you can get really close to the anchor and make sure that it's all in there really tight. If you have available, you can also secure these with thumb rivets. And again, the rivets are just going to give your bag a little bit more professional look. So I do in fact have rivets, and that's how I'm going to finish off this bag. I'm going to kind of find the center of this 1 inch square from the back on the front here. So I've got my hole. I'm going to insert it so that the post is on the outside here. And then I'm going to put the other side, I'm going to press them together ever so slightly. Like so. There we go. And there we have our straps on. And if I take the snaps and I snap everything up, there is our completed bag. And there you go. That is the sew along for the Miss Maggie handbag. So I hope you've enjoyed this sew along, and I encourage you to get sewing. Again, you don't necessarily need all the hardware. So if you've got the fabrics and some interfacing, you could get started today. The pattern is free on Emmaline Bags' website. I'll put the link to the pattern in the description below. Don't forget to catch all the other sew alongs for the September 2019 challenge. And if you choose to sew any one of the projects that we feature in the sew-alongs, you have a chance to win a prize from one of our sponsors. We have Emmaline Bags is one of our sponsors, Love Notions, and Itch to Stitch. So all you have to do is sew up one of the projects from the sew-alongs that we'll be posting throughout the months by October 13th. Post your image on Instagram with the hashtag September 2019, and don't forget to tag me, Akram's Ideas, and the winners will be announced on October 15th. Again, I hope you've enjoyed this sew along, and thanks for watching.
You will start by cutting two 16 by 13 inch, but there's other elements like, before we wrap up our lining, we need to include, you can